Welcome to Gate Crashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Today is a little different because I have someone else to thank for this interview. My stepmother, Megan, will actually help me set this one up. But in the past few years, wrestling has become a very important part of my life. A lot of my friends have gotten me into it, and I've really fallen in love with the sport after it all clicked for me. Today, I'm very lucky to be able to speak to someone local for the first time ever, actually. My guest today is the owner, operator, and coach of the Monster Factory in Paulsboro, New Jersey, which has a show, Monster Factory, that drops on Apple Plus on March 17th, which follows him and his wrestlers. Danny, how are you?
I'm loving life, my brother. I'm loving life. It's such a small world, and the serendipity of everything and us connecting. And
it is. It all happened
just dad and your mom for probably longer than you've been alive. So that's wild to me.
Yeah, that's very weird. It's funny because I was going over to their house to watch a pay-per-view, and I was like, wait, I had no idea. And it all just like clicked in the same day. And I was like, holy shit, can you reach out? And she's like, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. It's so great. And I love doing stuff like this because like, there's nothing better than like helping people. Like I'll never understand like people when they're all grumpy and they're like, hey, can you do this? Or can you do that? Or can you sign this? Or can you talk to this person? I would never like, that's the coolest part about getting to be somewhat famous is like to help people out and do stuff like that and open doors that you wish were open for you.
Yeah.
So I love stuff like this.
Yeah, we've had a lot of opportunities with how long we've been doing this site and stuff. We've gotten to hook a lot of people up to talk to people they've always wanted to talk to and stuff like that. But I'm not sure how much you know about me as a journalist, but I'm well known for being a hard-hitting one. So my first question is always one that catches people off guard, so I hope you're ready.
I'm sure. I'd love bring it on. Bring it on.
What's your favorite sandwich?
You got to go with ham and cheese. Old school ham and cheese.
Really?
Yep, ham and cheese and mayo. It used to be bologna, but I've moved on from bologna to ham. Ham and cheese, man. It's so, and I don't like any. I'm not a big fan of like hoagies. I'm not a big fan of like, lettuce, tomato, onions, all that stuff. I just like cheese, meat, and mayo. That's it. Every time I order a sandwich or like anything else, I'm like cheese, meat, mayo. That's it. No pickles.
That's interesting.
Cheese,
no
meat,
frills.
Mayo. That's no frills. Just cheese, meat, mayo. Yep. I'm just nice and simple. What do you go down with? You got like a Dagwood sandwich? What do you got?
I do. I had a sandwich which was the Big Daddy, but the place closed. But my go-to, like if I'm getting anything, it's going to just be an Italian hoagie. It's something that's really hard to mess up, but when it's good, it's always good.
You go with oil and vinegar, or do you go mayo?
Oil, vinegar, and mayo. I like a wet sandwich.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I used to make them back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
In employment orientation. That was a thing in Cinnaminson, was called EO, employment orientation. And we used to cook for the teachers, and that was known as a CL8. A CL8, cold lunch 8. For those from Cinnaminson who did the employment orientation with Mr. Manetti, and I'm pretty sure your dad did. Yes, CL8 was the Italian hoagie.
It's so interesting because I typically don't get, everyone I talk to is like not from this area, but I was watching the show and I don't know if I'm allowed to say that yet, but I see you in a Pirates hoodie at some point. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. Like that's Cinnaminson High School. Like my dad coached that football team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was a Cinnaminson wrestler. And what's so great is like this Saturday we have a show and my first Cinnaminson coach ever, Matt Long, is going to be there. He lives in Delaware now. He used to live in Hawaii, but he was my first coach in 8th grade. And then Coach Cunningham's wife hits me up and she wanted to know the website to buy some shirts for her husband, Doug. And that was my first coach ever. So to still have like this connection and these roots down in the area is something I'll never be able to fully appreciate and show my full appreciation to, because it's just so cool Like I know people that like don't even talk to people, like people my age that don't even talk to friends that like they grew up with or anybody from their town or anybody. I just couldn't imagine that. I don't know. I'm just like
Yeah.
a simple kid who just likes to hang out in his hometown, I guess. I don't know.
So with that, our area, so the South Jersey area and Philly especially has like deep roots with wrestling. Why do you think it's this area that has such a strong connection to wrestling? What about like our area's personalities really appeal to that sport?
Northeast is in your face blue collar, and there's nothing more in your face and blue collar than pro wrestling and amateur wrestling. I mean, honestly, it's just you like if you're with somebody from the Northeast, you're with them because you like them, not because it's just something there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's the way pro wrestling is. Like for example, me, people either love me or they hate me. There's no, oh, Dan's okay. There's nobody who says that. And that's the way it is with pro wrestling. Like no one goes, oh, it's okay. Or amateur wrestling. Oh, it's okay. It's either I love it or no, I'm not a big fan. Not a big fan.
Mm.
And I think that's why everything, gels that way for the Northeast.
That's interesting.
That's my take.
Now, you've done a lot of press for this stuff recently for the show, and I assume a lot of people are asking like your wrestling origins, your favorite match, things like that. But you coach wrestling. I'm super curious. What match has gotten the biggest pop from you for its technicality and the skill and craft in the ring?
Recently?
Yeah, let's go with recently.
Man, there are so many because like I'm more of a for the moment guy. Like I'm not like I love technical wrestling, don't get me wrong. But like, for example, MJF versus CM Punk's dog collar match.
Yeah.
Was masterful in its moments, its callbacks, the story told, the pacing, the timing, the finish. I mean, it was really a solid. Well, I'm not going to curse. It's a really solid match. I was almost cursing.
You can curse. You can curse.
Okay. Yeah. It was a solid fucking match. And
awesome.
it was one of those things where I was just like, cause I texted, Maxwell, and I was just like, holy fucking shit. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I texted him. Either that or keep killing it, kid. Cause like that was amazing. And it was one of those things like I knew it would like because CM Punk like really can't have a bad match. Yeah. And I just wanted to see if this was going to be the thing where MJF winds up not delivering or kind of panics or is a deer in the headlight or their styles clash or something happens. But I just think that match worked out perfectly. And it's sad that like, everything didn't work out after, but wrestling's wrestling, man. And you never know what can happen. Brett said he'd never be back and all that. And he came back and did some stuff with WWE. So who knows? But that was probably the one that's recent that I can think of. Yeah, I didn't get to see the Dan Bryan MJF match yet.
Wait till you watch it. MJF. People underestimate him, but dude's he backs his shit up because he talks the biggest shit. He may be the best on the mic that I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's a workhorse, man. He's a workhorse.
He's incredible. So with how did this show come about? Like, what got...
Here's that thing about serendipity and just being in the right place, right time, and having the right attitude. 2015 or so, a photographer contacted us to use some of our wrestlers as subjects. And I said, yeah, here's their contact information, reach out to them. And then this small production company or this group of people that wanted a production company were talking to that photographer about doing some videotaping or videoing and documenting of stuff for like a sizzle reel to show what they do. And they had told her, and then they're like, you got to contact Danny from the Monster Factory. You'll love it. They're inviting. They'll help you out. Just reach out to them. So they reach out to me and they're like, hey, we want to make this documentary. Could we use you guys as a subject? I'm like, absolutely. Never did I say, how much is it going to cost me? How much am I making? What are you going to do? I just said, come on in. Our doors are open. We're going to train anyway. You might as well tape it. Just do me a favor and let me have some footage and some pictures when it's done, and let me know what you need from us. And I even told him this. I was like, if you make us look bad or make wrestling look bad, I will kill you. And
yeah.
I said that to them, and they were just like, no, we promise. I was like, I'm telling you, dude. I was like, I'll make good on this promise. Don't disrespect me. Cool. I'm opening the doors to you. And they were great. So we started filming back then, and they're following us around, and I'm seeing all these cameras. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of cameras. And they got a haze machine. They got this. They're filming this. They're doing that. All these different lenses. They're going around and meeting with us and talking to us on the phone. So I'm like, how long is this thing going to be? Like an hour and a half? And they're like, well, it's a minute and a half clip. And I go, what? And they're like, yeah, we're just doing it to show what we can do artistically. And I was like, well, there's more here than that, right? And they're like, yeah, I know, we're starting to see that. And then they started talking to the wrestlers more and interviewing people. And then it was like, we'll be back next week. And then it turned into 16 and a half minute mini documentary that was on Vimeo and got like editor's pick. It's available still out there. You just go to Vimeo and look up Monster Factory. And it was unreal. And then after that, they kept on signing me, kind of like a thing like where like they were basically optioning for my life story or a documentary every year.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money, but they were saying like, hey, if we're going to do a project, it's going to be with them. And we kept pitching it, and a couple people were interested, and we had to film some things. And then we filmed this one sizzle reel, and it got some traction. And then what had happened was the pandemic hit. And then like everything slowed down. Also, what happened right before the pandemic hit is, turns out, I'm pretty sure one of the guys who was on this, or one of the guys that got attached to it, I don't know the exact story because there's so many people and I'm so terrible with names, but Jeremiah Zagar was either friends with one of them or roommates with one of them and good friends with them. And he saw the project and he's like, I want in with this. And he came out and met me and my family, took us out to dinner and all, and we all talked. And he's like, I really want to do this show. And then we heard that Apple was interested. And then, like I said, the pandemic hit. And then we started to film a proof of concept during the pandemic. They were flying people out. This is prior to the Apple deal. The Vox Media and Public Record, the companies that were doing the work on it, were flying people out. We were testing them for COVID. It was a closed set, and we were filming what we needed to, and using old footage to make this makeshift, basically teaser sizzle reel of like 7 minutes to like show like what the concept of the show would be. And it got picked up, and they were like, I remember they called me on July 31st because one of my other students had just got signed that day for Felix Fernandez, just got signed as a referee to NXT. And Apple called me up and congratulated me on having my own show. And then contract negotiations were on. But it was simple. It was easy. They were like so awesome to work with, so great to work with. I don't like to bash on wrestling, but such a great departure from wrestling, because the wrestling is so like, it's so weird with how they do business and stuff. And this wasn't like that. It was like, yeah. And like, if something pissed me off, I could say it. And if they needed something, we could talk about it. It wasn't just like, hey, we're paying you, you do this. And it was, I couldn't ask for more. Like the team was so great. I'm going to forget some names. I'm just going to plug some names here. Like Jeremiah Zagar, Will Krause. Oh man, I'm just getting a text from my wife. All right. Yeah, and it's an image. So, like when a wife is texting an image, it's probably like, hey, did you see this email? So, but yeah, Galen, Janie, Max, I mean, just so many different people, Nady, like all these, Zach, Andy, like there was such a great crew there, such a great vibe. Like they got me through so much because, like, as you saw the show, and you saw what went on,
Yeah.
and we're not going to talk about it, but like it was a tough time in my life, and like I don't know what it would have been like to go through that alone. And I don't mean alone, like sure the students would be there and all, but like I got to like really like bare my soul out there and like really throw it all out there and really be vulnerable, which I love doing. Like I have ADHD, I'm OCD, possibly sometimes bipolar, I think, and I have like huge issues. So what I do is I make myself super vulnerable. So then like I have no choice but to deal with things, and I can't bottle things up. So I throw everything out into the universe. I tell everybody what I'm doing, what I'm planning, everything. So there's never a surprise. And it sometimes leads to unwanted anxiety on my end, but overall it's served me well these last couple of years, especially like something like this with the show.
Yeah.
Because I always talk about and think about this in your everyday life. How often do you try to not cry? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if we want to laugh, we laugh. And if we're trying to hold in a laugh, we're looking around and making sure other people are seeing us trying to hold in our laugh because it's an emotion and it's funny and it's this and it's that. But like our first form of communication when we're young is crying. And that's the first thing we're taught not to do. So like, I think we're like dealing with a society, and I've found it myself, like where I've been crying so much lately just because I stopped like holding in that emotion. But probably from age 18 to 40, I maybe cried a dozen times.
Gee, that's a long time of
I know.
working back through that emotional kind of
yeah, and that's the way I was brought up, and that's the way I was. I just, if you were crying, you were weak.
And it show like it not that it shows the show you are an authentic person. That's what I enjoyed most about the show, is that how authentic it is. It's hard on the sleeve, and it is. There's something you say in one of the first episodes about how wrestling is a place for all the weirdos and the misfits and things like that. And I'm curious for you, why do you think wrestling has that sense of community for people who don't sometimes feel welcome other places?
Well, here's the thing. What most people don't know, but I tell them, like, I was a nerd. I was just a nerd that fought a lot. And I fought a lot because I was forced to fight a lot. But I was a nerd. I was into comic books, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, Masters of the Universe dolls and shit like that. So like I gravitated towards comic books and stuff like that because like it's superheroes and you need rescuing. And same thing goes for pro wrestling. Like I say about pro wrestling is most people that find pro wrestling did it because they're running from something. And that's how I found pro wrestling. And I got attracted to it because my home life wasn't great. And they were like real life superheroes there. And it was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, I'm doing that. I don't care what anyone says. At age 10, I decided that's what I'm doing with my life. And, I had teachers that would laugh about it and teachers that supported, like one of my teachers from Cinnamonston, Mrs. Trager. Do you remember her? Or do you know her?
So I grew up in Maryland. I didn't get to grow up in this area. I'm here now. Right. Yeah.
All right. So she was a Cinnamonston teacher and she was my English teacher. And she would let me like write all my papers somehow on pro wrestling. Like as long as I could figure out a way to get like my stuff into like pro wrestling form, she would let me write like some of my stuff on pro wrestling. So like when most people are writing about, the Revolutionary War and crap like that and different thesis statements and stuff, mine are like about being on the road in pro wrestling and storyline stuff. And it turned out we just had a conversation one time during school and I told her that I wanted to be a wrestler and her neighbor was Gorilla Monsoon and they were great friends. And I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if it wasn't for Gorilla Monsoon, because Gorilla Monsoon is the one who broke Larry Sharp into wrestling. and he's the school I bought. I bought the school from him.
That's wild.
Yep. And Larry trained me. So this whole time, I didn't even know that this was, I didn't even know that Grohl Monsoon had trained Larry and helped break him in with Mr. Fuji. I didn't find that out until like 2011, when I was just like hanging out with Larry and we were just going over like, how he broke in and all the different stuff. And he let me know. So it's wild, man. It's a small world.
It's wild how like one person can believe in you and it ends up doing this snowball effect. And so something that I think is really cool about how you're training your wrestlers is that you're not just doing the technical stuff. You're not just doing the ring stuff. You're teaching them all the skills. So there's an important part about setting up the ring. Why do you think having all of those skills is important to learning how to be a good wrestler?
Well, the more you know, the more valuable you are. If your phone or if my phone I'm talking on right now, all we used it for was to call, that's cool. But if I had a phone that could also be a video camera, this and this, that's even better. And that's the way it is. Like if you know that ring and say if something goes wrong and you put it this way, if the ring breaks down and there's only one person who knows how to fix it, it's very difficult because now you're trying to direct 10 other people to help you fix that ring.
Yeah.
The ring is something, it's your workbench. That's how important that is to you. And everything in it should be perfect and in working order. Like I can tell when people hit the ring, if something's off. I can hear a noise and know that it's off. I could watch how the ropes are moving and everything within an instant. If the ropes are too loose, which rope is loose, stuff like that. Like we're dealing with stuff right now. A rope just snapped the other day and we got new ropes in. And so now we're readjusting the ring to the new ropes. So like the kids just think, oh, you put the ropes on and that's it. No, that's not it. You can't just do that. We're training in this for 4 to 5 hours every couple days. So like it's wear and tear on the ring. So you got to make sure it's right or it's going to go wrong. You can't run it into the ground.
Question about the ring ropes. Are they like guitar strings or you have to have them adjusted to the right, like kind of tunage so they bounce or they give?
Yeah and no. Like put it this way, like you want it like back in the 80s, ropes were very loose because no one was using it to propel themselves. They were just used to whip in and all, and to make it look like it's really giving and stuff like that. Then once things started to become more high flying and luchador style, ropes got tightened up so you could be able to springboard off of it and adjust accordingly. And now that the athletes are even bigger doing stuff like that, like before it was like someone 180 to 200 pounds maybe was doing aerial stuff. Now you have people into their 300s doing springboards. So that's how tight they have to be. And WWE uses real like hemp rope. We use steel cables in wrapped in a hose. And that's what AEW uses as well. We use 18-foot rings and WWE uses 20-foot rings. And AEW uses 18-foot rings as well.
Interesting.
Yep.
So something I've picked up on a lot from wrestlers, because I have written way more about film than anything else. Something about wrestlers is that they're incredible with timing because everything has to do with timing. How do you best approach teaching someone that?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question?
Yeah.
Because you just spoke up a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So how do you best approach teaching timing to a new wrestler? Like how to time exact moves, time their cells, things like that.
It's a matter of, there's an old saying in pro wrestling. If you think you're going too slow, go even slower, because you need to slow down, because the biggest thing in pro wrestling, and I try to explain this, I tell them, think of it as a movie and think of it as scenes, but we don't have cut. So as the camera's on this other person, you have to stay busy. There is no cut. So this camera now is on this person.
you have to stay busy and sell no matter how long it seems awkward, because right now you're off camera and the camera's just centered on that one person, that one key person. So like I'll say it all the time, and people in wrestling say all the time, it'll be fuck off until it's your turn. And fuck off means stay busy. And that's what it got me in trouble a lot of times, like during training, like especially like with the Apple crew there and all.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, everybody fuck off for 10 minutes. And they thought it meant like goof around. I'm like, no, it means stay busy while I'm doing something. So that's like a wrestling term. So if I was in the corner, I'd be like, blah blah blah, and fuck off on the corner, fuck off to the corner while I do this, and it's just sit there and sell while this happens. But timing is big. But like I said, you have to think of it as theater and as a movie. And a lot of people in wrestling don't teach it that way. They think of it as like it's real. And if we're going to do that, then I'm not worrying about the cameras, because nobody's worrying about the cameras in football. You know what I mean? No one's saying, hey, make sure you throw the pass to the hard cam and sell to the crowd. No one's saying that. So then don't try to teach it like it's a real competition. It's not. It's not real. And I don't want the crowd to think it's real. I want the crowd to suspend disbelief and get lost in this. I don't want them to quote unquote think it's real or a shoot. I don't want them to think someone's legitimately hurt and then concerned and then giving themselves anxiety. It should all be at the pacing of, like I said, like a movie. You know, a beat here, a beat there. It all adds up to that timing. And also what goes back to timing is, if you'll notice the way wrestlers do things, they don't ever really stutter step or take small steps. Everything is big paces and big strides. And that's timing wise. Like if you watch them run the rope, it's usually 2.5 steps a turn. So 1, 2, half turn, 1, 2, half turn, 1, 2, half turn, 1, 2, half turn. And it's a beat, it's a rhythm. And everything in wrestling is beats and rhythms. When I teach wrestling, I always say everything in wrestling is a stop and a pop. If you watch anything in pro wrestling, there is a stop and a pop, and people don't believe it until they watch it and they'll see it. So if I'm whipping you in to give you a backdrop, I would whip you in and then I would bend down. And as you're coming in to take the backdrop, you would stop right before me, post up, and then pop over. Same with a hip toss, same with an up and over in the corner, same with an arm drag, same with a body slam, same with a flex, everything. Pop and stop. So it's a matter of getting the timing down, but repetition breeds habit. So like we'll do things over and over and over again with reps. So the selling and the timing is the part that you're concentrating on, and everything else is second nature, because the moves and all are secondary. It's those little moments in between. Those moves mean nothing if nobody sells, nobody gets the emotions, nobody draws it out, nobody makes somebody care. So the moves mean nothing if all those little things don't hit. That's a lot, right?
Yeah, now I'm never going to be able to watch and not look for the pop and stop. Like I'm going to be like concentrating on it, because I think the technicality, like I'm not into technical wrestling. What I'm really into is gimmicks. Like I'm into people who are bigger than life. I love. Yeah. Are there any wrestlers right now that you think have a really good gimmick that you're into in the wider space?
I love what Bray used to be. I'm not sure what's going on now, but that's also kind of like why I like it, because I know he's a very smart person, creative person. So I'm sure there's going to be a payoff for this. I like them. That whole crew he's got going on with Howdy and all. Love the black pool fight club or combat club. That's cool. I'm big on Judgment Day just because Damian Priest's in it, and that's my boy. But I like them because, and see if this makes sense, I don't know if you were a wrestling fan, but like New Day came out years ago and everybody hated them and they said it was a waste and they're trying to force this stupid faction down people's throats. And then they turned it into their own thing and did their own thing and let their personalities come out, and it killed, and it's been killing forever. And that's what happened to Judgment Day. I think Judgment Day started off a little rough and they weren't sure it was just Edge and it was Damian Priest. And then it was Rhea. And then they got, Finn. And then they recruited Dom. They kicked out Edge, stuff like that. And I think it's taken on its own life and it's becoming like a darker version of New Day. I think it's great. I think it's cool to see 4 friends just hanging out and having fun. And that's what's going to translate because you can't help but really enjoy something authentic. And I think they're really having fun.
Yeah, I'm the same way. What got me to even start watching was the Elite, because I just liked watching this group of people who were friends. And they're just, you can tell they're enjoying what they do. So
yeah, absolutely. I love that. When I would see those clips, I'm like, see, this is what wrestling should be.
Yeah.
It should be I loved it.
So with the show, if people watch it, what's one thing you want them to take away from it about pro wrestling? What is something you wish more people would see?
That it's way more than you think, and it's more art than it is combat. It's basically theater. It's theater, and people don't want to hear about it, but it's theater. It's 100% theater, and I love it.
Danny, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited for everyone to get to see the show. I'm excited to get to see your show myself. And where can people find you and the Monster Factory online to follow what you're doing?
You can find me on Twitter at the Danny Cage. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram, Coach Danny Cage, and on Facebook, Coach Danny Cage. The Monster Factory is the number 4, and then Monster Factory on Twitter and Instagram, and Monster Factory on Facebook. Monster Factory Pro TV on YouTube, and of course, Monster Factory on Apple TV Plus. Look at that.
You got it all in there. You can find us at gatecrashers.fan for all reviews, analysis, and interviews. Thanks. Talk to you later.
It's the Gatecrashers.